Maya's hands trembled as she stood between the real Lara and the approaching mob enforcer, her mind racing so fast she could barely think. She had spent weeks rehearsing smiles, memorizing songs, perfecting a life that wasn't hers, but there was no way to rehearse for this moment. This wasn't a performance anymore, this was survival. The enforcer stopped a few feet away, his expression blank but his eyes sharp, weighing the situation, calculating whether she was still useful or already a liability. Lara didn't flinch. She stepped closer to Maya, her presence steady and commanding, as though she had decided in an instant to stand her ground rather than run. "You've got 5 seconds to explain," Lara whispered under her breath, her voice meant only for Maya. Maya wanted to cry, to fall to her knees and pour out everything, but she forced herself to stay upright. "My brother," she choked out, barely able to form the words. "He would have lost everything. Our uncle owes them money. They made me do this. I didn't want to steal from you." Her voice cracked with desperation, her eyes burning as she searched Lara's face for a shred of understanding. For a heartbeat, there was silence, the kind that stretches too long and makes you believe it will crush you. Then Lara sighed, a low, sharp exhale, as though the weight of the situation had just settled fully onto her shoulders. The enforcer broke the silence. "Time's up," he said flatly. "The boss wants to know if the deal's real or if this has all been a joke." His words weren't shouted, but their weight was heavier than any threat. Maya's throat went dry. She had no deal to give, no authority to promise anything. If she confessed, they would see her as worthless, disposable. If she lied, she'd sink deeper into a hole she couldn't climb out of. But before she could speak, Lara stepped forward. Her confidence was so natural it stunned both Maya and the enforcer. "The deal's real," Lara said smoothly, her tone icy but convincing. "But it's with me. Not her. You've been dealing with the wrong person." Maya's jaw nearly dropped. For a second, she thought Lara was betraying her, handing her over to the mob like a lamb to the slaughter. But then she realized what Lara was doing, she was taking control, reclaiming her name before the mob could use Maya any further. The enforcer narrowed his eyes, not quite convinced but not willing to challenge a woman who clearly carried the presence of the real star. "Then you'd better come with me," he said at last. "The boss will want to hear it from your lips." The hallway felt smaller as they moved together, Maya trailing behind Lara and the enforcer, her heart pounding so loudly she thought everyone could hear it. She wanted to scream at Lara, to beg her to abandon this and run, but she knew Lara wasn't the kind of woman who ran. She faced things head-on. It was both terrifying and strangely comforting to Maya, who had spent so long surviving in the shadows. We trusted her Uncle Vince, but she had never imagined how far he would go to keep his grip on their lives. Ever since their parents had died, she had been trying to hold her little brother's world together, working long hours, sacrificing her own ambitions, doing whatever it took so that he could have a chance at a normal life. But nothing about their life was normal anymore. Her brother Leo, barely 12 years old, had stumbled into a shining acting career, his innocent smile and natural talent catching the attention of casting directors who saw in him a future star. For a while it had seemed like a blessing, a way out of poverty, a path to stability, but in Vince's hands, it had quickly turned into another weapon. Vince had debts, deep, ugly debts owed to men Maya wished she had never met, men with cold eyes and softer voices that hinted at violence just beneath the surface. He had blown money on gambling, alcohol, shady deals, and when the mob came to collect, he looked to Leo's earnings as if they were his personal lifeline. Maya had tried to intervene, tried to protect the small fortune her brother's work had earned, but Vince always found a way to manipulate the situation. He had power on paper, signed guardianship papers that gave him rights Maya didn't have, and he used that to keep her trapped. If she resisted, he threatened to call social services, to paint her as unstable and unfit, to rip Leo from her and place him into the system. That was the nightmare Maya lived with daily, the fear that she might lose her brother to strangers who would never love him the way she did. Things had worsened in recent weeks. The mob's patience was wearing thin, and Vince's excuses had grown more desperate. Maya overheard late-night phone calls, whispers laced with curses, promises that sounded like lies even as they left his mouth. Then one night, Vince unveiled his new scheme. He was pacing the cramped living room, a cigarette dangling from his lips, when he looked at her with the gleam of a man who thought he had just outsmarted the devil. "You're gonna help me fix this," he said. "You look close enough to that girl from Katseye." "What's her name?" "Lara." "People won't know the difference if you play it right." Maya stared at him, not sure if she had heard correctly. He wanted her to impersonate a global pop sensation? It was absurd. Insane. Dangerous beyond measure. She shook her head immediately, told him no, told him she would never take part in something so reckless. But Vince had a way of pressing on weak spots until they cracked. He reminded her that social services were already circling, that Leo's custody was in jeopardy because of Vince's own record, and that the only way to keep her brother was to play along. "Do this," he insisted, "and we'll have enough money to square things up. The mob will back off. Leo stays with you. That's what you want, isn't it?" Maya hated him for saying it, because he knew exactly where to. The first night should have been the hardest, but it turned out to be only the beginning. Once Maya had stepped into Lara's shoes, Vince wasted no time in pushing her deeper into the role. The fake performance was a success in his eyes, money had changed hands, fans had been fooled, and the mob had gotten a taste of what they wanted. But for Maya, it was a nightmare that refused to end. Every morning she woke up with the crushing weight of deception pressing down on her chest, and every evening she found herself practicing Lara's mannerisms in the cracked mirror of their tiny apartment, rehearsing lines, facial expressions, the rhythm of a laugh that wasn't hers. She didn't even know who she was anymore, Maya, the older sister trying to save her brother, or Lara, the pop star whose stolen identity kept them one step ahead of ruin. Leo watched her with a mix of awe and fear. He knew enough to understand this was dangerous, but he also trusted her completely, believing that whatever Maya did was for his sake. That trust cut deeper than any knife, because she could feel herself losing control of the lie, and once it slipped, it wouldn't just be her who paid the price. Vince, of course, saw none of that. He was intoxicated by the scheme's success, boasting to shady contacts, arranging bigger and riskier appearances, pushing her into situations where the chance of exposure grew higher each time. He reminded her constantly that the mob was breathing down his neck, that she had no choice, that without him she would lose Leo forever. The deception spread like wildfire. Social media posts of Lara at unexpected venues began circulating. Fans speculated why she was performing outside her tour schedule, why her style seemed different, why she seemed more approachable. For a while, the lie worked in her favor, people chalked it up to Lara reinventing herself. But Maya knew the truth, the closer she got to perfection, the closer she came to disaster, because the real Lara would not stay silent forever. She felt it in her bones the night she overheard Vince on the phone, his voice low but urgent, whispering about a lawyer, about contracts, about men who wouldn't wait much longer. That was the first time she realized the mob wasn't satisfied with appearances anymore. They wanted ownership, signatures, deals written in ink that would tie them to Lara's brand and money. And she wasn't Lara. If they ever found out, they wouldn't just be angry, they'd be lethal. The fear reached a breaking point when Maya received a message backstage one evening. Scrawled hastily on a folded note slipped under the dressing room door, it contained only 5 words, "I know you're not me." Her blood ran cold. She didn't need to guess who had written it. Somewhere out there, the real Lara had discovered the imposter who was parading under her name, and now the game had changed. Maya confronted Vince with the note, trembling with rage and terror, but he only laughed it off, insistent.